Welcome to Idlewild Cottage, a quiet place where kindred spirits can linger together over a cup of tea, savoring all things lovely and cozy. My name is Juliana, and I'm delighted to have you. Each episode here at the cottage will center around a theme. That theme will be celebrated in a number of ways, through literature, art, nature, and even some favorite movie scenes. We'll cherish the sweet and simple things of life. So make yourself at home, and I'll put the kettle on. Some of my favorite literary moments are those in which the main character finds him or herself still and quiet in the overwhelming presence of nature, soaking in the vastness of the blue sky, the immensity of towering firs, the ruggedness of majestic mountains, or the power of raging waters. In his piece, Golden Rowan, Canadian poet Bliss Carman captures the spirit of awe that comes upon the appreciator of beauty in nature. She lived where the mountains go down to the sea, and river and tide confer. Golden Rowan in Menaloan was the name they gave to her. She had the soul no circumstance can hurry or defer. Golden Rowan of Menaloan, how time stood still for her. Hers was the love of wilding things. To hear a squirrel chirr in the Golden Rowan of Menaloan was joy enough for her. For the next 2 episodes, we'll linger over a number of scenes, both on land and along the water's edge, where nature causes time to stand still for the beholder. This week finds us on land, savoring a number of vistas, from wild mountain summits to the more cultivated orchard. Let's quietly begin with the day's beginning. We'll join Laura and Mary Ingalls as they watch the sun rise over the prairie on the banks of Plum Creek. In the mornings, they ran through the dewy chill grass that wet their feet and dabbled the hems of their dresses. They liked to watch the sun rise over the edge of the world. First, everything was gray and still. The sky was gray, the grass was wet with dew, the light was gray, and the wind held its breath. Then sharp streaks of green came into the eastern sky. Laura and Mary sat on the damp, cool rock, hugging their chilly legs. They rested their chins on their knees and watched. The sky was very faintly pink, then it was pinker. The color went higher up in the sky. It grew brighter and brighter. Suddenly, the whole sun bounded up, round and huge, far bigger than the ordinary sun, and throbbing with so much light that its roundness almost burst. Laura blinked, and the everyday sun shone over the prairie grasses. It's morning for Christy Huddleston, too, of Catherine Marshall's book Christy, when she first takes in the vastness of her new Smoky Mountain surroundings through her bedroom window. Nothing had prepared me for what met my eyes. Mountain ranges were folded one behind the other. In the foreground, snow-covered. Behind that, patches of emerald green showing through. On beyond, deeper green. Then the blues began. On the smoky blue of the far summits, fluffy white clouds rested like wisps of cotton. I counted the mountain ranges, 11 of them rising up and up toward the vault of the sky. As I lifted my eyes to those summits, involuntarily I took a deep breath. I did not realize it then, but from that moment this became my view, a source of peace and strength, a stabilizing energy that entered into me to quiet the mind and satisfy the heart. While we find ourselves gazing over mountain peaks, it's most fitting that we should join Heidi as she delights in her new life among alpine pastures and towering rock. Johanna Spyri writes, Heidi stretched herself on the ground and began looking about her in every direction. The valley lay far down below, resplendent with the morning sun. Heidi saw before her a large, wide snowfield rising up in the dark blue sky. On the left, there was an enormous mass of rocks rising up to the heavens. Deep silence prevailed everywhere to a great distance. Only a light, soft breeze swept over the slender bluebells and the shining golden buttercups which stood everywhere, nodding softly and merrily to and fro. Heidi was pleased with everything as she had never been before in her life. She drank in the pure air in the golden sunlight, together with the sweet perfume of the flowers, and cared for nothing else but to remain always where she was. Before we make our way too far down mountain slopes, let's join John Hale along The Trail of the Lonesome Pine, written by John Fox Jr. in 1908. He had seen the big pine when he first came to those hills, one morning when the valley was a sea of mist that threw soft, clinging spray to the very mountain tops. For even above the mists, its mighty head arose. He had seen it giving place with somber dignity to the passing burst of spring, had seen it green among dying autumn leaves, green in the gray of winter trees, and still green in a shroud of snow, a changeless promise that the earth must wake to life again. That morning it had seemed almost to nod down to him as he climbed, and when he reached the ledge that gave him sight of it from base to crown, the winds murmured among its needles like a welcoming voice. Dropping his bridle rein, he put one hand against it as though on the shoulder of a friend. For a while he sat against it, resting. Time was hanging heavy on his hands that day, and he loved the woods. Our journey through nature now takes us to the ranches of Wyoming, where the land comforts young Ken McLaughlin as he navigates the inevitable growing pains of childhood. From Mary O'Hara's 1941 book, My Friend Flicka, we read. Ken looked about for shelter. Here and there was a jagged outcropping of the pink granite which underlay the soil, here and there a small clump of wild currant bushes. He drew behind the bush and lay down and suddenly felt very tired and very happy. All the unpleasant things were behind him, and the grass he was lying on smelled sweet, and he was going to see his father and Banner bring the broodmares and foals up from the meadow. The sky was close and the blue curved over him. Up here at the ranch you could always see the curve, it wasn't flat. The clouds were solid-looking with definite, strange shapes, and the wind was driving them across the sky. In a moment, he was sound asleep. As the ranchlands hold their own stark beauty, so do the farmlands. In his 1907 book, Adventures in Contentment, David Grayson celebrates the human senses that are awakened in nature. I looked up and about me not to miss anything of the morning, and I drew in a good big breath, and I thought the world had never been so open to my senses. There is nothing like the early morning for downright good odors. Fresh from sleep, a man's senses cut like knives. The whole world comes in upon him. A still morning is best, for the mists and the moisture seem to retain the odors which they have distilled through the night. So it was this morning. As I walked along the margin of my field, I was conscious at first, coming within the shadows of the wood, of the cool, heavy aroma of moist woods and earth mold. In sunny spots, I had the fragrance of the open cornfield, the aromatic breath of the brown earth giving a warm, generous odor of daylight and sunshine. Down the field came the cloying, sweet fragrance of wild crabapple blossoms. The glories and mysteries of the morning lull our friends Rat and Mole into a state of awe as they arrive upon an island while searching for little otter in these excerpts from Chapter 7 of The Wind in the Willows. In silence they pushed through the blossom and scented herbage and undergrowth till they stood on a little lawn of marvelous green, set round with nature's own orchard trees, crab-apple, wild cherry, and sloe. Suddenly the mole felt a great awe fall upon him. He felt wonderfully at peace and happy. Sudden and magnificent, the sun's broad golden disk showed itself over the horizon facing them, and the first rays, shooting across the level water meadows, took the animals full in the eyes and dazzled them. The air was full of the carol of birds that hailed the dawn. A capricious little breeze tossed the aspens, shook the dewy roses, and blew lightly and caressingly on their faces, and, with its soft touch, came instant oblivion. The children of Elizabeth Goudge's beautiful book, Pilgrim's Inn, are often swept into the world of The Wind in the Willows, imagining themselves as rat and mole, running along through the woods making squeaking noises and dropping now and then to all fours. But we'll leave them to their merry frolicking and instead join Sally as she explores the woods in hushed solitude. Sally looked about her at the wood. It was, she thought, the loveliest wood she had ever seen, and full of deep peace. The woods across the river were beech woods, but this was chiefly birch and alder, with willows growing next to the water, and brambles and crab-apples, wild cherry and stunted oaks growing up the inland slope. The willow shoots were wands of gold, the birches and oaks silver, the mosses and lichens saffron and coral and jade. Overhead, the patterning of branches against the sky cut from the immensity fragments and patches of blue that yet seemed each of them to hold something of the glory of the whole. There were small stirrings of unseen wild things in the undergrowth and the rustle of wings, but the sound seemed only to intensify the deep stillness. Sally strode along with her hands deep in the pockets of her golden-brown tweed coat, her chestnut head gleaming, her face a little flushed with her joy. As we opened our time together with the sunrise, let's close with the sunset, as shafts of light filter through the pages of Lucy Maud Montgomery's 1910 story, Kilmeny of the Orchard. In this excerpt, we'll approach the orchard through the eyes of Eric. Eric walked briskly along, enjoying the witchery of the season all about him in earth and air and sky. He felt it and loved it and yielded to it. The spruce wood in which he presently found himself was smitten through with arrows of ruby light from the setting sun. He went through it, walking up a long purple aisle where the wood floor was brown and elastic under his feet, and came out beyond it on a scene which surprised him. No house was in sight, but he found himself looking into an old orchard. Most of the orchard was grown over lushly with grass, but at the end where Eric stood, there was a square, treeless place which had evidently once served as a homestead garden. There were 2 clumps of lilac trees, one blossoming in royal purple, the other in white. Between them was a bed ablow with the starry spikes of June lilies. Their penetrating, haunting fragrance distilled on the dewy air in every soft puff of wind. The charm of the place took sudden possession of Eric as nothing had ever done before. He was not given to romantic fancies, but the orchard laid hold of him subtly and drew him to itself, and he was never to be quite his own man again. In closing, let us join the psalmist as he too responds to the overwhelming glory of God's creation. For the Lord is the great God. In his hands are the depths of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Friends, as you find yourself out of doors this week, I encourage you to pause for a moment. Take a deep breath, soak in the sights, sounds, and smells of nature, and give thanks for the beautiful world in which we live. Thank you for joining me today, dear ones. Please come again soon to Idlewild Cottage.